Hey guys, what's up? Tony Big Blind here, and today I am bringing to you a different sort of video. Today I have brought the top 2 competitors from my December's standard monthly event in order to come rank all of the Dungeon Master cards. So this should be very exciting and very fun. It's going to be a much longer video, so sit back, relax, maybe do something else in the process, and listen to these two pros of the game discuss what the Dungeon Master faction has to offer. Take it away, guys.
Hi, I'm SirPenguinn. I'm a top player. You might know me for winning the Ultimate Tournament, and I'm here to talk about Tierlist.
Hi, my name is Tucky, and I'm also a top player, and I'm here to talk about tier lists too.
Alright, then let's start it off. First card, Alkar. Interesting card. What do you think about it, Tucky?
I'm thinking it's either a high B or a low A because, it's a 4/3, it's a blocker, and it can give you a free spell.
Yeah, I was thinking low A because I think there's enough high cost cards being used right now and enough niche combos with it with uniques like Pact and Spellbook that I think low A would just fit it best because the downsides with the banish and downsides with other stuff happening, I think it's too little to make it not worth what it is, which is a really good 4/3 that can get you a lot of value.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on then.
Alright, Necromancer. A 1/1
Necromancer.
that summons a 0/1 first, but it stacks up 1/1 for each Amalgamate, so pretty good card.
It
I
is
mean,
like, gets your bones in the grave, or maybe gets a powerful bone out, and it's two blockers. So I'd say that is for the amount of value you'll get out of it, I think that's a B.
yeah, I'd agree with high B. I think like the fact that you get two blockers is good enough that I feel like B is a good spot for it, but not too crazy that A would be like the right
Exactly.
place. Yeah. All
Okay,
right.
so we have
Arcane.
Arcane Experiment. In my opinion, I think that is a high B because obviously it's a blocker, also gets you draw, and it can come back after you play 3 spells. So really, you're getting a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, I think I could agree with a high B because it has a lot of value in Bone, a lot of value in Mastery, and overall in most DM decks it can get you good card draw, but it's not needed with other good card draws in there. And since it's only a 1/1, you can usually use Call over it unless you want a blocker or want a Bone or Undead. So
Yeah,
I feel like
exactly.
high B works for it.
Perfect.
All right,
All right,
Bone
then.
Amalgamate.
Yeah,
Uh, Weird card since it is a token. It builds up really quick. It has a lot of cards working for it, but
yeah, yeah.
with the part Bone's been in meta, I just like I think it has enough uses with like Necromancer and like I like the 2 mana spell that you can get the card and put it out. So I think low C, high D if you want to just put a little lower, but I think like low C is probably a good spot for it.
In my opinion, I'd either put it high C or low B because it can be quite a powerful card, especially if you get the gears going. Obvious weakness to aggro decks or mastery, but apart from that, Bones usually beats most mid-range decks at their own game. If they're going the
Yeah,
same speed, it's going to be Bone on top.
but I think it
So
takes so much setup that putting it B, I don't know, like especially in the likes that we've already put in B. Like I know it'd be lower,
yeah,
but I think I have to put it
yeah,
C.
that's a good point. I'd put a C then. It's a solid card, but it has its weaknesses, especially if you draw Gravekeeper at the start.
Yeah. Now Bone Brute, I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna put it S tier. I think, well maybe not S. I'm thinking either S or really high A, because this card it's good for undead if you want more for your dread Corpse-Flinger. It's super good with Mastery and Lich because it works great with Soul Essence and it works great with Masterying spells every turn. And it's a pretty powerful like a 3/3 when it gets that amped after a spell's played. Like I think it makes it a really solid card. What do you think?
I agree, because for a 2 mana, that's a 3/3, and I don't believe there's, apart from Dark Matter Blast, there is no other removal which gets rid of it at a 1 or 2 mana. So if you've got mana advantage and you place that turn 2,
Yeah.
they can only really do it maybe with an enhance Dead or Alive. and just minimum amount of removal, getting rid of it, and them having a minimal amount of monsters, maybe not even playing one that turn. It's a really
Yeah.
solid card.
So you think an S or high A? What do you
I'm
think?
thinking, I think A. I wouldn't say high A yet, but
Okay.
it's certainly a solid card.
All right, I'll agree with A. I'll agree with A. All right, Arcane Book.
Okay. I have really seen a lot of value in it. Although it does give a 1/1 and 1 mastery, it doesn't give a lot more over that, because if you remove that creature, that's you wasted a card in your hand. For example, if
Right.
you draw that first, you're not getting much value out of it. Later game, maybe value, but still not getting that much. Although
Yeah.
it is a 1 mana, I wouldn't say it's very good. I'd put it at a C.
I think I agree because the problem is it only really works with mastery, and mastery you can't really want bad cards in your hand. And this card, once you use it on a creature, that creature usually gets removed since mastery runs out of creatures quick. So I just don't think the card is ever gonna get the use it really deserved to go higher than C, especially with Dutiful, with at least it's a creature on field to block with.
I agree. Okay, Boons to Bones. Now, this is quite a good card, in my opinion,
I agree.
because although you do have to discard a card, you then draw another card to make up for that. While also it leaves room for good combos. For example, if you need to get like a decent size, you need a blocker in the field, and maybe a high mana target like Doomed Apothecary or Mastercraft Flesh Golem on the field, you can play that, get a bone, and then use Necromancy and get that big creature on the field for half the mana. And I feel like that's just good. So I'd put that at a high A.
I agree. I always liked it because discarding a card is so helpful when it comes to like if you want spells in the grave, if you want something to necromancy, there's a lot of combos with it. And getting a free blocker that can build up, especially with bone tax, and the fact that you draw another card, so you don't really lose anything other like technically you're down one, but since that one goes in the graveyard of your choice, it was either a bad card or a card you're comboing with. So I would agree. I wouldn't say high A yet either.
Yeah,
I
you
would
might. I think
simply say A.
maybe A to low A actually. I think I made a
Yeah.
mistake there. A to low
Yeah,
A.
I agree with an A though, because I think it has so many uses where I'd agree with an A, but it might be a little lower.
Fantastic.
All right, reanimation. This one, whew, people have
Oh,
varying opinions on.
yeah, this
Yeah,
is a tricky
there's a lot.
one. So, uh, how it can go is, well, I see it only being really useful in two decks, which is Lich, where you use a bunch of Soul Essence and swing, lose some of your things, and then you play Cosmic Reanimation, swing even further. That's good. Or Spellbook for Forgery, and in a spell deck, and then you just burning a bunch of your low mana spells, and then getting a whole field of them, and then pushing to surprise your opponent. That is also a very good thing to do with it. But again, it is situational. So I would only put that at a low B to a
Yeah, I
B.
think I'm gonna go with low B too. I think it's too niche to be able to be like at like with the necromancers and arcane experiments, which can always be helpful. I
Mm,
think like it takes so much work, but the work it can put out is good enough in those decks, and in the future I can even see more with it. So I
yeah,
agree. I think low B. I think that'd be a good spot for it.
fantastic. Dark Matter Blast. Now, this
IA.
card is a tricky one because it can be self-destroying, but it can also be huge. For example, in mastery decks.
I
And
think
yeah, what's your opinion on it?
it. I think in mastery decks, not only does it get a bunch of damage, but I think it's one of the strongest like cheap removal cards in the game because the damage it outputs in a non-mastery deck to you is minimal. Like I spend that on Stellar Shard any day, and I just the 3 damage mark kills a lot of important targets. It kills those Bone Brutes, kills those Gravekeepers, it gets rid of those like annoying Plunder cards which don't have 1 HP. It really
Mhm.
just takes down a lot of the cards that I find myself facing the most. And just because
Yeah,
of that, because it gets everything, like every good card that I really see myself facing early game gets usually removed by Dark Matter. And so I
yeah,
just think I have to put a high A.
yeah. I don't know about high A, although it does give it's good mana value because you can kill almost almost all, if not all, 2 mana creatures,
Yeah.
and quite a lot of 3-mana creatures, it's good mana value. But apart from that, it can be self-destructing at the same time. Because if you're a mastery deck, and you've that's the only spell in your hand, and you got a lot of mastery, although you're bringing your opponent down, you're making yourself more susceptible to their future
Yeah.
attacks. So
Yeah,
I
that's
would
why you
put
have
it
to use it
at,
early in mastery. But
I'd personally
yeah,
put it at a high B or low A, because
I think,
although it's a good card, it does have its downsides.
or from what I'm seeing, I kind of like it. Well, I like it a little more than, of course, the 2-mana bone card we put in A. And so I want it low A, just because I think there's so much it removes, and the fact that like you can play it early with mastery to not take the damage. Late game, you're probably already, if you get a dark
That's
matter in early
true.
hand, you're
Yeah,
desperate.
low A. I'd agree.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say low A because of that.
Um,
Ooh,
Desperados.
no.
Now,
Hmm,
very hot take here. Not a lot of many people will agree with this, but I
okay.
think it's a B tier purely because there's too many things for it to get rid of, and it's very situational.
Well,
That
think about it.
it's a very situational card, and most
Yeah.
decks nowadays have loads of removal.
Well, we have Gunhaunt and Desperado's call in here. Like I know Gunhaunt. Gunhaunt with Desperados is like I agree. That's pretty good. I'd put that higher up. But then Desperado with Gunhaunt's call, it's way too risky since it has to be timed so well to work, and it usually isn't really worth it.
Yeah,
So
but Gunhunt Desperados with aggro, they're very good. As you said,
yeah,
Gunhunt's call, they're not good. So they're just too situational for me. At the highest, I would put them at a low C, just because any form of removal gets rid of them. Plus,
right.
if your opponent is playing Portion of the World, they're gonna outlast you really easily as well if you don't kill them fast enough.
And
So
because Gunhunt's call is not good, and like Gunhunt itself, it's like a gamble
yeah.
stays a random from the graveyard. I agree with lower C. It's
Plus,
a
the
gamble.
the thing is, we put bone amalgamates in lower C, and I feel like
Yeah.
they're just much better than Desperados. So I feel
Oh,
like
I
if we're
agree.
putting Desperados in C, we should put bone
Mm,
amalgamates in lower B, just because they're just so much better than Desperados.
yeah, because at least there's more, but it also takes a lot of work to build up. But I think, yeah, I guess you're right. I would move Book Amalgamate up to like lower B, and then put Gun Hunts in C, or Desperados in C. Sorry.
Awesome.
All right. So on to Dread Experiment, which I love this card. It
Hmm.
works well with Ritual. It's a really like a 2-mana 2-card draw. Yeah, you gotta sacrifice, but there's a lot of good last word cards.
Yeah, and
I think like.
honestly, I'd put that in B because it just works super well with Arcane Experiment as well, and
Mhm.
I feel like it's just as important as Arcane Experiment to have Dread Experiment in your deck.
Yep. I think
Because
I agree with that.
yeah, yeah, I would put that at a low to mid B.
Yeah, I'd say mid B because I think it's the like most balanced card and one of the most balanced cards in the faction. Like it has
Yeah,
plenty of upsides, plenty of downsides. It can kill your arcanes, kill your bone amalgamates, like early on. So I think there's
yeah,
enough use with it where I love it.
awesome. Now, dreaded Corpse-Flinger. No, um,
No.
this card it did get a buff recently of 1 extra health, which did help it, so it doesn't get Dark Matter blasted easily.
Yeah.
Now, the issue with it is that can also be that it's a target for removal, so sometimes the value just isn't super worth it. And
Yeah.
yes, it does 1 damage for each undead that dies, but you don't always want your undeads dying, especially late game, because that's usually, for example, a bone deck, that's usually when it's at its highest, you know?
Yeah.
So in
I
my
agree.
opinion,
I think. Oh, wait,
I'd
say
put
it.
it C. I'd put it at
C.
C in my opinion.
I'd agree. It's like I always wanted it to work, but
Yeah.
the amount of work it takes has just never really been worth it, no matter how much I've really tried for
Yeah.
it. So while it is it's not a bad stat line, and the ability is not a bad
True.
ability, but it's just so niche that like there's just
Yeah.
better ways to do gun haunt decks with undeads. There's better ways to do bone decks with undeads. I don't think Corpse-Flinger is the way to push it.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe if they made the damage like 2 damage instead of 1, maybe
Yeah,
that might be a bit powerful, but you know what I mean?
I
I
can
feel
see
like that
that.
would be better. Awesome.
I don't know. I have to see in game, but yeah. I like it there.
So, Dreadful Drain. It's a pretty solid card in my opinion. Gives you 2 health, and it does 2 damage, and obviously the damage can go up with mastery. What's your opinion on it?
I like the card, but my problem is I don't see myself ever using it out of mastery, because other than that, it kind of just be a waste. 2 damage, 2 healing's not bad, but I feel like
Mm-hmm.
in any other deck but mastery, I don't really think it has a spot for it. But in mastery, I think it's so helpful to get the damage and the healing that I
Yeah,
like it enough to try to put it in B. But I don't know if I could put it too high in B, just because it only works in mastery. Like, there's not that many uses with this card outside of that.
I would personally put it as a C, although it works well in
Makes sense.
mastery. It works okay against aggro decks. Like it can make you survive that little bit longer to pull off your mid range, but apart from outside of that, it doesn't really as you said, it doesn't really have much of a place anywhere. So I
Yeah,
would
I'd put
put
it
it
high.
at a C. Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer it higher C, just because like from what I see in C, I want it. I'd see it as above them. But I do agree that in any other deck but Mastery, and this some niche it has against aggro, like I usually
Hmm.
wouldn't want to plunder it. Not, like plundering, well, actually it's not that bad, but I just usually wouldn't want to have it in my deck in general. So
Yeah. Now, Dutiful Servant. So it's really just a card. You get what you see. There's nothing. It's very
yeah,
simple. I mean, if you play a spell and your opponent decides to attack with their dungeon master, you're ensuring your dungeon master doesn't take any damage if you have him down. But
yeah,
outside of that, he's just a
yeah.
not a great card if I'm being honest.
Yeah, like
Mastery, it's all right.
maybe he could block a creature turn 1 or 2, but other than that, it's just for some like you want to turn 1 in mastery, you'll use him. Or if you want an
Mhm.
underling creature and underglass, I guess you can use him. Or if you just
So
want some niche under damage spells, but
yeah, yeah, and he's very niche as well for him as well. So
yeah,
in my opinion, it would either be a low C or a high D.
I think I'm gonna put him in D as well. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. I just don't see enough use in him to even put him in mastery. The only reason I put him in is because I see my mastery and I go, I need to fill some room, and I have no turn 1 so that I can play other than spells. And so I put
yeah,
him in just for that niche. But I think if there's any other 1 mana that gets introduced in the factions of like Augur and DM that's like slightly good, I would put it above it. So
that's fine. Right. So Frenzied Flessuer. Now this card's interesting because for example, if you're mirror matching a bone deck and you get that down and you put two powerful bones on top of each other, and then
yeah,
Great Revitalization, you won the game. Game changer.
yeah.
And its stat line is a 6/4, which is
Which I like.
also really, really good.
Mhm.
And it can help with ritual decks too. So in my opinion, I would put this at a B. I think a B, mm, low B. Nah, I put it as a B. What?
I think it's for me, whenever I use revitalization decks, I'm usually getting what I need to do out of the creatures, and I don't need to flesh sower them. And then just for bone decks in general, you have Lich, you have Dread Experiment. I don't
That's
usually
true.
need to kill him off with more cards, right? And Flesh Sower, he's also a very like he's a pick like you place him and they will probably kill it. It is 5 mana, so most removal spells are available to them. They will probably steal it, kill it, banish it, whatever. Because like, oh
Aye.
yeah, they notice. They see that if they let this on the field live, they could lose the game in a second. And so I think because of
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
scare, it's such a high target. Which yeah, it's good if it can get rid of a good removal itself. Honestly, I just think
Mhm.
there's there's better
Better
there's better
options.
abilities for the 5 mana, like Royal Crypt Guardian, in my opinion. And
Yeah,
there's
that's true.
stat line wise, I'd rather do like a Stellar Shard. So
Yeah. So would
I
you say a C maybe?
I put a high C because I like
High
his stat
C.
line and his ability is nice niche, but I just think there's better sacrifice and there's better stats.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Great Revitalization.
That is
I
good.
would personally put this as a high B or a low A purely because this can be a huge decider between two mid-range decks. Because if one of those mid-range decks are not running a Great Revitalization, they have a much higher chance of not winning.
I agree.
In my opinion. But yeah,
They've had to change a lot of cards to make sure Revitalization is balanced because it is
yeah,
such a powerful card.
it's super.
They need
Honestly,
other cards to work around it, right?
yeah,
I think right now in the meta, there's not. I don't really see a spot for it right now because of
yeah,
just with the power quality nerfs and the necromancy nerfs way long ago. It's kind of lost those really potent decks, and now it's just using those mid-range deciders and bone decks, which
hmm
aren't doing too hot. Because of that, I'd have to put it top of B. I don't think. I think an A tier is going to be more generally used. Like you'll see it in public right now. And Revital, I don't really see that in public right now. But I still believe that it's a really strong card, and
Oh
that it
yeah,
will be
it,
used in the future
yeah,
to great effect.
yeah. I agree. It's certainly it. I believe it can make it to high A, but just not right now. Maybe later on in the
Right.
meta.
I agree.
So,
It could even go to S depending on what cards are added. It
oh
is a
yeah,
wild ball, you know.
but plus the draw two as well. You know,
Yeah, I agree.
and the Gunhaunt. So,
Gunhaunt. People
what's your
think
opinion on this?
he's people think he's the best dungeon master. People think Gunhaunt's even OP sometimes. I hear. And
I
I've yeah, I've played with Gunhaunt decks. They've never really been meta. They've always kind of been a dark horse. You know, I've watched potent decks win with them. I've seen Aiden run very, very many versions of Gunhaunt decks that have done well. I've seen Mastery Gunhaunt do well sometimes. I've seen Bone Gunhaunt do well sometimes. But I think it's always just kind of been that dark horse. It's never been a real meta decider. Like its ability to get out these Desperados with ranged, helpful against flight, helpful for some aggro, helpful for some field to defend with. But I
yeah.
just like I think
Well,
the have decks for them. Gunhaunt, he's just the well-rounded.
I feel like to use, yeah, it's well-rounded, quite flexible, but for him to be as potent as to be able to win tournaments, but it is possible. For example, Julius, his main deck is with Gunhunt, and he was one of the championships winners, was he not?
No, he used the Zerathux Mastery when he won the ultimate.
Ah, right.
But
Well, in any case, I feel like although Gunhunt is flexible, it takes quite a lot of skill to be able to make it in the higher leagues with him.
right,
So
I think
at
I'd be
that,
confident to put him at highest of B because he's
yes, I
so
agree.
well-rounded. But I don't think he'll hit the cusp of A until there's real like I think if Corpse-Flinger ever gets like a buff in the future, he could be much better, like that 2 damage you were talking about maybe
I
earlier.
agree.
But
Yeah.
for now, there's not really a certain deck for him, so he lacks that spot in a meta deck and a meta place to really give him that placement that he needs.
Yeah. Gunhunt's called
Yeah, useless. I
the
don't even want to talk about this too much. It's bad. It's risky. It's never gonna do what you want it to do. Like people say, oh, you already have spare mana. No, you shouldn't have spare mana. No.
yeah. I'd rather have a different card to use that mana with to
Yeah.
be more. 'Cause it's just way too. Although it's a flexible card and it gives you an extra blocker. Maybe if you have 0 mana, it's a 0/1. Doesn't
Mhm.
so yeah, you're a bit safe against bees, I guess. But outside of that, it
I'd
just
rather use
is
a
not good.
3 mana card than use a 7 mana version of this card
Yeah,
because a 7/1 is still such an easy target to pick, an easy target to block even with ranged. I don't know. It's just D.
exactly. Maybe if it was something like if there's a way for you to choose the mana, then it could. I'd put it maybe
Maybe,
a high C at that
yeah.
point, but
Or maybe
outside
if you
of
could
that,
choose like if it's 7 mana, put like 3 into defense or health, 3 into like damage or something. I
yeah,
don't know. It would need a rework to me. But yeah, I agree with
yeah.
D.
So, loyal Spellshaper. I would put
Ooh,
I would put that at an honestly. This may be a bit controversial, but I'd put it at a lower S to a high A because if you use it properly, yes, it's a 4 mana card. Well, no, it's 3 mana, but then the first spell you can use so that you get value off is Dark Matter Blast. So it's realistically a 4 mana. But
and even
because
that's
if you
risky.
use
It's
that,
usually one of those 2 mana spells to use, so that so you don't take damage. So
yeah,
like
that's
I
true.
even see 5 mostly.
Five, yeah. But the thing is, once you have that down and you play a spell with it, it's such people will want to attack less, they'll want to remove less just so you don't get that extra spell. Because mastery having that extra spell is quite deadly with different aspects. Like That's an extra spell in the graveyard. That's extra damage. You know, with Mastery, you want every damage you can get, and Loyal Spellshaper is going to give you that. And
Yeah.
once you played a spell, once you got down and playing a spell every turn, you're just gaining continuous value from your opponent doing less and you getting more. You know, so I'd
Yeah.
put it at a low S because
I
of
think
how
it's
powerful it is. Plus Mastery too, man.
right. I think its downside is that it's just other than mastery, it's only niches being played with I like Lich to sacrifice that once you play a unique card.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's reliant on mastery, and I think if it got a nerf, it would hurt mastery too much. Depending on what the nerf is. Like if they made 1 health, I don't think it'd change the card at all. If they took away the damage, I don't think it changed the card at all. Like stuff like that. So it would have to basically hurt mastery. And
Yeah.
so I don't think I could put it in the S tier because we put S tier as needs a nerf. And while it
Mhm.
is super potent, it's in that spot where for an aggro deck, it does have to be played a bit later into the game, and it also is like if you change it, it's just gonna never be used in any other deck, and then mastery won't be as good. Like might not be even on a contention. So I would put high A,
Oh
but I
yeah.
don't know if
Yep.
I could push it for S.
I could settle with that. Yeah.
All right, all right. Onto a
Mastercraft,
more
let's go.
yeah. This one's a little easier to rate. It's had a lot of changes, a lot
Yes.
of changes. All right, it's dude like nerf after buff after nerf. It's been changed. Um, I think now that it's not going to kill itself with aftermath, and now that it has pretty solid damage, pretty solid health, it's it's good in bone. You can get like guaranteed 2, 3 bones usually. It can't get stolen anymore. Can't get power to quality anymore. But at the same time, like while you will usually have to spend 10 mana or the 5 mana with necromancy combos, which is actually pretty good even though you have 3 health. I think it has enough niche in those bones that I can confidently put it high C. Maybe they'll be, but I think because 10 mana is a rough spot right now. There's not really a good 10 mana. 10 mana is really hard to get on field, and if you do get on field easily, it's gonna have to require necromancy, boons to bones, and it's gonna be half health. So
Honestly,
I don't know.
in my opinion, I would not put that as high C. I'd put that as either a high B or a low A, just because it is a win condition in itself. Because if they don't have removal, that's just gonna sit there and do its work like endlessly. Like since it, as you said, it takes no damage, it can just sit there and keep generating bones, and it's harder to remove because it's had those attack buffs. It can't be stolen, everything like that. So there's not tons of removal which can one shot it. So usually you'd have to use multiple removal, which then gives you more value because they're spending multiple cards
Right.
on your one monster instead
But
of
then it
using it on
has
your
to
other
be
monsters.
played. But then it have to be played turn 10, which is so late in the game that most games are done by then. With this meta being really aggro right now.
With the I guess with the current meta, but there's always the Boons to Bones Necromancy combo, or
But then it has
even if
its
it
health
dies.
to a point where most things kill it.
That's
And
true.
especially late in the game. That's why I think like again, that's like Revital. I put it higher because I see its niches now, and I see it being great in the future. Like enough for me to put it a little higher. But for Flesh Golem, Bone decks right now are struggling. Mid range is struggling, and late game doesn't happen a lot. So
Okay.
you usually have to necromancy it, and that's 3 cards, which you're taking away from other to be done, and also it's half health. So I don't know if I could push it. I could put
Well,
it low B,
yeah, I
maybe.
was thinking that
'Cause
because like you're
I think
right
it's
with the
better than the
current
C tier
meta.
cards.
Yeah, because with
That,
the current meta, as you said, there's been new flying cards. Like literally, flying could beat Bone Deck quite easily.
right.
And Mastercraft Flesh Golem, yeah, 10 mana. It's taking your whole turn, and they could banish it with a 5 mana. Now that I think about it, it
Yeah.
is a risky card. It can have good payoff, but yeah, I'd say a low B would suit it.
Yeah. Again, I look at the C tier cards and I just go, it's not that bad. So
Yeah,
I'll now
yeah.
mind corruption. Phew.
Ooh,
Ever since
very
Force of
situational.
Acquisition came, it's been interesting. I
Mm.
think I've never seen this card played outside of tournaments where it's big creatures only or like one faction only because it had its uses in neutral only, it had its uses in MRA only, had its uses in 5 mana plus. But those were modifiers, of course. Other than
Yeah,
that, I've seen absolutely no play because there's usually another block. If you're getting a good creature with Mind Corruption, if you have Lich, you can auto kill it, which is really good. But you have to be
Yep.
playing Lich. All right, which that's actually not that bad. But at the same time, other than the Lich, Dread Experiment, you take 2 cards, 7 mana, and then the pushing feature. If you're getting a good creature with it, it's not going to be hitting for that much damage, and it's going to be blocked. Like 99% of the time, it's getting blocked. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's useless. I think because of Lich alone and Dread Experiment even, I don't know if I can put it useless. But I don't
Yeah,
think I
those cards
can
do help
low
it.
C.
Yeah, it's very situational. It's very niche, and most of the time people are gonna have it multiple blockers out anyway, and cannon fodder. Like they can, like if you steal one of their big monsters, they'd happily throw away cannon fodder just to do minimal damage, you know. So I would put it at for the current, like it was better before, it would have been a B, but with the current meta, I'd say it's a C to high C.
I look at C tier. I could see it. I don't see it above Flesh Sower, but I can see it above Book. So I think you think that's a good spot, right above Book, behind Flesh Sower.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
All right, I can agree with that. Necromancy. Whew, I want to
Honestly,
put that S, honestly, but I don't know if it needs a nerf.
honestly, I think it's a really solid card. You obviously get the entrance bonuses again. You get or even the death rattle bonuses again. And it's a really flexible card. It can go in almost any deck. And honestly, I'd put it at an A just because of how flexible and how easy it is to use. And usually you get good value out of it as well.
I think for that same reason though, I want to put it S because for the A cards, like right now, each of those cards I can see a deck where it may not be too great, but Necromancy, I can like the only deck I don't see it working in is Augur decks, which are mostly spells. You know, obviously it won't do too great in those. But I think every deck that has at least like 15 creatures, even like 12 creatures even, just it's so good. In every deck, in Plunder, it can get out crazy entrance abilities for cheap. In MRA, it's one of the lifesavers of getting out those aggro cards, getting those bees back, getting those elementals back. And in DM itself, it gets back Necromancers for the extra bones. It gets back like any high value target, like the combos. It can get out 10 manas with Boons to Bones. It can get out dead 10 manas that have died, or dead 6 manas, etc. It's so good. And yeah, it does have the health, and it
It does
does
have the
cost
health.
half of them, but and it does round up, sadly. But I don't know. It's well round up half on like the spending,
I'd
but
say
I don't know.
just after Bone Brute. I'd say it's just higher than Bone Brute.
I would say it's better than Spellshaper because Spellshaper works in one deck, Necromancer works in every.
That's true. I'll give you that one. Yeah.
I would say
Necromancer is
it's
just really, really good.
one of the best in DM. Like I don't
Right.
know, I wouldn't put it as just because I don't see it getting a nerf. I don't really see a nerf in its future.
No, it's
It's
balanced in my opinion.
right,
Yeah.
but it's definitely one of the most powerful. So high A.
Yeah. Very powerful. Poison Gift. What's your opinion on that?
They did give it a buff a few times, but I still think it's so niche. I'd have to, better than Dutiful, but I think it'd still be in the useless tier. I've never really seen a deck where I'd want to use that over every other card draw in the game. Like,
See,
oof, I don't know.
I think it's not too bad because, like, for example, if there's like a one mana flyer, you can't really deal with it. You don't really want to waste a dead or alive or something on it. But
But
with
wouldn't you
that,
rather use a Call the Old God or a
you
Bullets
could.
or
I
Coin
get. I
or
guess. I mean,
Vanguard?
poison. I guess, but I mean, Poison Gift. I mean, you can also give Poison Gift to a B, I guess. But like, I would put it at the very least the lowest of C. Well, at the most, the lowest of C.
My
I feel
point
like
is like,
that would be fair.
have you ever considered putting it in an actual deck?
I put in a couple, but I mean those aren't anything like they're not like like my augur. They're nothing like my augur deck or my main
Mm,
DM deck. Like they're yeah, it doesn't belong in any of them. So
right.
it would either have to be high D or a low C.
I would say at least it's more consistent than a Desperado, but then again, Desperado just has other combo cards with it. Same with Corpse-Flinger. I just don't
Yeah.
think there's no real deck to put it with, and there's always better card draw or better removal, and it's just in that in the middle point that it's pretty mediocre to bad at both. I would put it best of D though. I see it way better than Dutiful and Gunhaunt's Call,
All right.
but
So
I
the
just
best
don't know if I could put it higher
D
than
play.
Desperado.
Yeah. All right. Ritual. Now
Which
that is a card. Now
solid card. Solid.
it's solid, but it's just so easily countered now with Royal Filibuster. So that you've been stalling for those turns, you've been putting a lot of effort into that for it to just do no damage, you know?
Yeah,
But it
especially with
does
healing now. Ooh, you
yeah,
might not hit it.
uh, exactly. But I guess it does, it puts pressure on your opponent, they're more susceptible to misplays, and it's a decently flexible card since it can, as long as it's not as long as it's not an aggro deck, it can
Yeah.
put a good timer on a game. For example, mid range. If you're in a mid range fight with another person, that can
Mm.
be another decider along with
Yeah, like when I
great rev.
plunder it in a late game, I love it. That's a game decider in a late game if you're plundering. And I think
Oh yeah,
also like you could use out like it's your only spell and you use Alkar, guaranteed pick, you can get it early. You could do like Filibuster does counter it pretty badly, where enough that it really hurt it. But at the same time, you can get the jump on them because you get the one turn off, you could use Lich for another sacrifice, you could use Bees for other sacrifices, and you could use Dread Experiments for other sacrifices, which those are
yeah,
pretty good cards. So I think you could get the jump on a person who has Filibuster, who doesn't expect it and doesn't want to waste it because you always have so many sacrifice. If you really have a deck around it, they could get around it. But again, that
oh yeah.
takes so many cards and so much use that like other than those late games where you plunder it, or maybe just late games in general, just I don't see that meta wise happening. And I
No,
just
it's
think
a
the
fun
work it
card.
takes. Fun.
It's
I love the card. I love it.
yeah, it's
Right,
a fun card, but nothing like
right home
oh
about.
yeah, yeah. Like with the strength of aggro right now, it
Uh-huh.
decks revolving around Great Rev. Although there's those couple, with the Alkar and the
Yeah.
bees, because the bees sacrifice himself. Outside of that, it just isn't
False alarm.
going to last competitively.
Yeah.
So I would say either a high C or a low D. No, high C or a low B.
I let's just think of B. Do you see it as better than Desperado, or do you see it as worse than Desperado?
Oh, I'd say no. What in C? No, in D. No, C. Um,
Yes. See.
I'd say it's above, just above. Yeah, I'd say it's better than Desperado, but I'd say it's above Mind Corruption. Like I'd rather take a Ritual than a Mind Corruption.
That's true. I could see. I think it's just the fact that there's not a lot of late games going on is that people aren't using it. But because of
Yeah,
that really good beach deck and the fact that when you get it late game in those late game games, especially against Augur, it can do really well. So I think I'll agree. It needs
all right,
work, but I think it's solid.
perfect. Yeah, might become more powerful later on. Now, Royal Crypt Guardian.
A lot of people
Honestly,
love this card. A
I
lot of
think
people.
it's a fantastic card. Like it's like you're getting value out of just placing it by putting more of a certain card in your graveyard. Like if you're running a Zarathrix mastery or a bone deck, it's just placing it is going to give you value. And when it dies, it gives you a card, or when it kills something, it gives you a card, well, up on top from the top of your graveyard. And I think that's just a super powerful move. So I would honestly put that as a high B or a low A.
I think I could get with a low A. Like I definitely think Dark Matter's better than it, but I think I really don't like high manas usually because they just get removed so easily, and it's a lot of money to be spent or mana to be spent on a card that may not do too much. But because of its entrance, because of its death blow, and because of its last word, I think it gets enough value. Well, I think it's enough value out of it. It has something for everything. Like if you kill with it, it's good. If you die with it,
Yeah,
it's good.
it's
Enter with
just
it, it's good.
and it's a
And that's
4/3
enough for
blocker
me.
too.
I would put it behind. I would say I would say Dark Matter should go above Boons to Bones.
Yes, but I was
But
about to say that. Yeah,
yeah, I was gonna say we should probably move that. I don't think it's better than Alkar because Alkar
no.
is more uses. But I think that this card, I think Relic Guardian. You think it's better than Boons or worse? What are
I'd
you
say it's
thinking?
better than Boons. Like Boons puts something in your graveyard and gives a bone, but like Royal
This
Crypt
also puts
Guardian.
things in your graveyard, but times 3, and it also gets you a card back.
Aye.
So, yeah, I think I'll put it above Boons once. I agree.
Now
Lich.
Lich. Okay.
Lich. It
I
wasn't S tier. It had that crazy Lich aggro. Really ran
honest,
that ultimate tournament. Maybe not the
honestly
best. It's in
I
top 3
didn't
deck.
think that was. I don't like the old Lich. I don't think that was so bad. Like I wouldn't even put the old Lich as an S.
Well, it was. Well, I wouldn't say S, but it was in a top 3 deck. You know, it was up there with the Plunder and the aggro Maggie,
Yeah.
and it
Just
pretty
yeah.
now. Pact of Non-Aggression and just the slight healing cards definitely put a bone into it. The nerf where it doesn't get buffed by Soul Essence really hurt against like its aggro counters, because now the aggro counters could push to deal damage to you instead of them pushing and dealing damage into a Soul Essence to you. So it's
Yeah,
negating damage, which was big. It was really big.
exactly.
So
And
I just,
mhm.
ooh. As of
honest,
now, I see it in like some bones, but Gunhaunt can usually overtake it in those.
yeah,
And then
like
aggro, I also kind of want Gunhaunt Desperados over it. You know,
yeah, I'd for aggro I'd prefer Gunhaunt. For bones I'd prefer Gunhaunt because then you're taking away the flying counter. Plus with Lich you're sacrificing field as well, which is really big
and if
and
you're not
can really hurt you.
sacrificing field, he's doing nothing.
Yeah,
Like there's really not a point.
I'd put him as like controversial, but I'd put him as a high C. Like I'd
I
just
see
put
him
him over.
having more uses than a flesh golem.
I'd say it's over the frenzied. Mm, I don't
Better than
know.
drain. Yeah, no,
I
better
think
than
I
flesh golem. Better than frenzied flesh golem. Flesh golem takes that 5 mana to spend and then it gets removed. Lich at least stays with its sacrifices.
yeah, but at least that
But
gives you like it can give you a decent sized bone. I'd put it over frenzied. Just yeah, over frenzied flesh sewer.
yeah, I guess we can keep it behind drain. But I think just drain only works in mastery. But again, what decks Lich works in, Gunhunt does better.
Yeah,
So, so it's
apart from
like
maybe ritual of annihilation, but again, as we said, it's just
that's
not. It's
that's
not.
niche.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is so at least drain has a good niche. You know,
Yeah,
I think that's why that I agree. I'll put
soul essence. So
Ooh.
I mean, uh, it gives everything a 1/1. I mean, and it's for 1 mana.
Yeah.
It's a good card within itself. Like it's if you got a decent field, it's good. If you don't, then it's useless basically.
It's
Especially
hard to
as we
think
said.
about it. It's hard to think about it since you do have to use Lich with it. But the thing is, as on its when we're just thinking about it, it's on its own. It buffs the entire field 1/1. It it's pretty cheap. It it can get gain. You can get a lot of it. You do have to sacrifice for it, but you
Yeah,
can get a good amount of them to get big pushes. That like with 3 soul essences requiring 3 sacrifices, you can get a vindication, better vindication buff for the turn, except without the flight if you have the reserves. But
yeah.
what I'm saying is I don't think it needs a nerf because they've already they nerfed it by not affecting dungeon masters. I think with it affecting dungeon masters, it on its own was good enough to be S tier because it negated that aggro damage. But now I would put it A still. It's still a really good card, but it takes that
Eh,
work. And the fact
hmm.
that Lich again, it's just such a good card. I know it has to be used with Lich,
See,
but it
honestly,
is
I'd put
still
it
such
just
a good card.
personally, I'd put it just before Great Rev, because although it's good for those one-hit wonders, but like if your opponent brings up a decent field,
The
usually
thing is, you don't have to do
Lich
one
doesn't have
hits. You can
removal.
just slightly buff them just to do like that good extra damage every turn,
That's
just to
true.
keep your field
Okay.
buffed. It can negate some removals, like some removals won't kill anymore. It'll make sure your 1 health don't get killed by call. It'll make sure your 3 health don't get killed by dark. It'll make your bone brutes go crazy, 5 damage. You know,
Aye. Okay. I'd say if we're putting it in A, it'll be below Boons to Bone, because I'd rather have Boons to Bone.
I agree. Because it requires
Okay.
so many sacrifices to be getting the amounts that I'm talking about
Exactly.
that
Like it's a
like
bit
bones can just be raw dog used and be good,
yeah.
while Soul Essence
Like
requires that sacrifice in the field.
Soul Essence is a bit contradictory to itself because it only works well if you have a big field, but you need to sacrifice in order to get the card. So it's a
And
bit.
it does balance out when like Lich was really good, but now with those changes and the fact that the meta heals a little more, I just think it's like with the fact that you could even heal 10 with one card. Oh,
Hmm.
Lich ain't coming back. They don't have the card draw for that. They ain't
And if
coming
your
back.
opponent has Basimoth, then ah, they're gonna have
Yeah,
a couple cards. Now, Spring Trap. Honestly, it's another
uh,
card that you get what you see,
yeah,
and
balance,
it's
solid for its
balanced.
job.
Oh, kill insta kills tokens, so you could kill like big bones if your opponent has any, or if you want a nice entrance ability, you can get that back too. That sort of
Yeah.
thing. Honestly, I put it as a B because it's not too powerful, not too weak.
Yeah, I
It's
think
it's
as
flexible.
we see more big creatures on field, a 2 mana just getting rid of it's really good. I think
Yeah,
right now it's sad that it gets like reparations kills most big creatures, so it's basically doing Spring Trap's job except they can't replay it. But I think the fact that like you can get those high damage creatures with it, and you can get those 10 manas, which most of them
yeah.
have that above
And you're
damage.
wasting your opponent's turn for 2 mana.
Yeah, they have to respend that again. So now you basically know their plan. Like they can either change their plan or they can do the same thing. So it
Exactly.
puts you in a position of knowledge and power. Like you have a one up.
I'd
So
put
I'd
that just
agree.
over Cosmic Reanimation.
Yeah, I think it has those niches and its good uses just outclass reanimation or
Yeah.
revitalization.
Now,
So
Call of the Old
no.
God. Very.
Mm,
It's a good card. You know, you spend. You use a card and you gain a card, so it's so you're getting decent value.
yeah,
It's a
you
two
can
mana.
kill a cheap creature, you can get a card draw, and then you get to put more on your deck, which for mastery gets you a lot more damage, and for other
Yeah.
decks just helps you get into more card draw, get a little more damage. And when stacked with any mastery card, whew, it's pretty good.
Yeah. I personally put it over just over Great Rev.
Mhm. I think
Well,
I'm tempted to put it in A though, because
I don't.
I
Hmm.
really like it. I think the thing with it is that it's a 2 mana, gain one. It does 1 damage to a cheap creature. It could kill 1 mana, possibly 2 mana, usually just the 1 manas.
I
It gets
think
rid of those pesky Skywatchers, those pesky,
that
Shining
that
Mimics,
that's
Shining
true, but
Desperados.
like Dark Matter Blast, for example, that can be
Yeah.
pretty decent later on in the game to get rid of maybe a bit decent sized creatures. So that's,
Mhm.
at least quite a bit flexible and it does decent damage. Now with
Yeah.
Call of the Old Gods, that's too niche to put into um A, because like everything in A right now, Necromancy's, flexible, Loyal Spellshaper flexible, because it's different.
Spellshaper, I don't know if it's flexible, but it's just crazy enough in mastery that I put it in
Yeah,
there.
okay, yeah. Bone Brute, like it's a 2/3. That by itself is good.
Yeah.
Alkar flexible, Dark Matter Blast flexible, Royal Crypt Guardian flexible, Soul Essence, and Boons to Bones. It gives a
I
good
mean,
blocker, and
yeah, even
it's just
without like
all
you
around good
using the
card.
discard, it lets you trade a bad card for another card, gets you a little blocker, and then possible
Yeah,
shenanigans
yeah,
graveyard.
exactly. And
Yeah,
that's why it's only low. That's why it's only low A. But
yeah,
honestly, Call of the Old God, I think just above Great Rev. Not
yeah. I
quite
think
over
Gunhaunt's
Gunhaunt
better
though.
because Gunhaunt you could summon Desperados and then push, killing those weak creatures anyway because they're gonna be forced to block, less take the damage.
Yeah.
So usually they'll be
So
gone by that time as well. So yeah, I agree. Under Gunhaunt.
final final spell. Now this is honestly a really good card. Like if you've got like let's say a hand of 6 cards and your opponent has one, you final spell. There's a good chance you won that game because they're just top decking at that point, you know.
Yeah,
And
I think.
yeah,
Yeah, you can go. You can go.
and it's also you use that against most mid-range decks. You've won the game as well because that's their win condition gone within one turn.
Yeah, I think for me though, I always had a burning hate for this card. Before it was
Oh,
buffed, it was atrocious. After it was buffed, it had its use, but I think I just every time I've seen it, it's only good when you have a bigger hand than your opponent, right? Because if you have a smaller hand than your opponent, they're gonna get a bigger field. Even if they had a
yeah,
better field at the time, all you're doing is stalling your death, right? So you have to have an upper hand, and you have to make it to turn 10, unless you want to use cooking the book slower it, you know. harder now than it was before. With the cooking the books, holy shit, this card was good, right?
Yeah.
Like this, that was good. But without it, it's either 10 mana or you're lowering it to like 8, possibly even 6 with cooking the books, which takes a lot. You're using the mana anyway, so it
I'd
has.
I put
me
it low. I put it low B, just above Bone Amalgamates, because it's obviously going to beat that type of deck. What do you say?
I think I could agree with over Amalgamate. Reanimation, is it better?
Hmm.
No. I think because you have to have a
I,
bigger hand and then like you have to have a bigger hand and you have to make it to a like the late game turn. So it
yeah,
has enough you have to have a deck for it really. Like your deck
I,
has to like there are a few decks that are really helped by it. Not like based around final spell, but are really helped by it. But would it
yeah.
outclass the amount of decks reanimation has? I
I
don't know.
feel like it would, because Cosmic Reanimation is far. It's purely because it's far too like it's far much harder to pull
Yeah.
off than Final Spell. Plus, you're losing health,
Agree. Yeah, I agree. I'd
and it's
put it
a one
above
hit wonder.
reanimation.
So yeah,
But Spring Trap, I don't know if we can
no,
take that.
no,
But
I
yeah.
wouldn't say
So I
above
think it's in a good
Springtrap.
spot. I think it's in
Yeah,
a good spot. Uh, Reconstructor. I talk about this one. Uh, Useless.
I
I
wouldn't
think
say
it.
either.
I think it's better than Dutiful, but I think a 3 mana 3/3 isn't bad.
I
But
I wouldn't put it
sacrificing one of your
anywhere near there.
well, the thing is, you have to use it in a bone deck. Other than that, you're just no.
Yeah, use it on a Desperado. You're killing like what, a 1/1 Desperado for 2 bones in your graveyard. That's pretty big in my
Yeah,
opinion.
but to get that 1/1 Desperado, you banish something for your graveyard. You're losing a blocker. You know, I
Well, yeah, to add another blocker.
yeah yeah, but that blocker could have just you're still losing a like you have the same amount of blockers now, but you spent 3 mana.
Yeah, to
So
get. I feel like it gives a good bump in your bone deck, because okay, if you're
look,
using
it's
Gunhaunt and you have like your opponent might not even kill any of your bones. Let's say you're using
yeah
Gunhaunt, we think that's better in a bone deck.
yeah
And if you got nowhere to sacrifice them, then your bone deck's useless. I feel like
right.
a Reconstructor helps with that. So I'd say it's over Flesh Sewer.
But I think I would rather use poison gifts. You know, I would rather use
Really?
poison gifts. I've never even used that in a deck, and I would like I guess in all right. I would say in bone decks I'd rather use Reconstructor, but bone decks aren't doing too hot. And even in a bone deck, you have to have those sacrificial cards already on field, which I guess if you're using Gunhunt, you have those. But I don't know about
I
above Flesh Sower. I guess I could put it in the C tier, but I think I'd put it above Book. I'd put it above Mind Corruption, but behind Ritual.
Yeah, okay, I could go with that, because it
All
isn't
right.
like yeah, it it is it does speed up the deck, because but like as you said, the current meta.
Like it only works really in Bones. If other than Bones, it's useless. But
uh,
in Bones, it's good enough where I'm putting it up. But since Bones isn't good, it's lower. If Bones gets really good, it could be like that Spellshaper situation, where since it's
yeah,
carved that really good niche, it goes up, like it was when the game originally came out. But since we're not in that spot, well, actually, at the start of the game, it was just S S S S plus, uncontendable. So it's definitely faced a downward spiral, but I could see it being C. Maybe D is a little harsh.
yeah. No, till death do us part. That is
Worst card in DM.
probably one of the worst. Yeah, because that's 4 mana to give a 4/4 basically.
Yeah, I
I'd
think
rather
the
take a
only
Stellar.
thing competition is Gunhunt's call on whether who's the worst. What do you think?
Yeah,
Because Gunhunt's call, it's situational, but at least he'd spend it at little mana just for a free blocker. This, not
add
only do you have to have undeads, but you have to be confident enough to waste 4 mana just to make those undeads a little bigger. So,
yeah.
and
Oh,
I've seen a niche, Julius has shown me his niches in his deck, where it's
oh
like it's
yeah.
fine, but like there's not really any other buff
Th-
cards. And this card as a buff card isn't bad, but it's forced to be used with undead cards, which
Yeah,
is a little
I
rough.
would. Oof.
A little rough. It's good on Bonesmith, and it's good on bones that have been buffed, but that's it.
Yeah,
That's
it's far too situational, and it's such high. I would put it under Gunhunt's Call, because at least Gunhunt's Call, you can put like a little old blocker for 0 mana,
Yeah.
Four
And at least
mana.
this
Like if you
has to be
started
used
with
enough.
that,
Yeah, I mean, I guess Julius is niche enough. I mean, I wouldn't put Gunhunt's Call in his deck, but Undeath to his Call I could at least entertain for at least a second. 1
but
second,
when we
you know.
played it, it didn't really,
Yeah, he was already winning when he was winning, so it didn't do much. And then when he lost, it didn't do anything, of course. So it
yeah.
was just kind of there. Same as it was
Well,
in Kaku's tournament, even when
I'm
Bones
happy
was
with
meta.
where it's at.
Yeah,
So, Tombstone.
yeah. Ooh, I love this.
Honestly, it's basically, in my opinion, it's just a weaker necromancy,
I agree. I think,
So,
unlike Necromancy, it can get high cost creatures abilities like Archivist for cheaper. Instead of 3 mana, it'll be 2 mana, but it'll have a weaker stat line.
yeah.
So I think it's enough to put it A though, because you could use it with Necromancy to have 6 cards that use Graveyard. I think
Yeah,
that's
if we were going to put an A, it would just be, I think it would just below Soul Essence.
yeah.
Because it is a 1/2, too easy to
My
remove.
problem is that it lost its name, so now it doesn't. I think it had such a good use with Ooze, and it lost that. It
That's
really did lose
true.
that. Like you can still
Oh,
use it
that's
on
a
the
good
Cynic,
point.
but it lost its. Oh, well, that's why. Like, if it was still used with Ooze, I could even put it higher. But I think because it lost the name, you don't have the elemental name, you don't have the Ooze name, you don't have the undead name. It doesn't work with Corpse-Flinger. It doesn't work with your Acidic Overlord popping out from the reserves.
With
So
that
because of
being
that,
said, oh, I'd put that a
it's
bit lower
either.
in that case.
But I would still put it above Gunhaunt just because there's so many good uses for it still. Like it can be
That's
used
true.
on your Pillaging Prince, your Daring Swindlers, your Crypt Guardians as you used in our game. You can just use it
Yeah,
on so many good last word
and it's
creatures.
really
Its last
flexible,
word
yeah.
creatures are pretty good. And because of that
Honest,
flexibility, and activates. Good on
yeah,
activates. So I would
yep,
say it's either higher than Gunhaunt or it's under Soul Essence. And
yeah.
I would say under Soul Essence. I'd say I like it in the upper tiers.
Okay, yeah, I'll agree with that. It's good,
Alright.
it's flexible, yeah, it's all good.
I think just because its flexibility goes above Gunhaunt.
So, Trap Engineer, it's a solid card, I guess. It's all right.
I think it really describes the average tier. I don't
I'd
think
put
it's
it
like,
below average, to be honest. Like, I'd
yeah,
put it just below Lich.
because I see, well, yeah, in average, I see stuff like Necromancer and Arcane Experiment. I couldn't consider Rat close to those two, but I could also consider Rat closer to Flesh Golem and Amalgamate. But at the same time,
I'd put it higher than Flesh Golem because it's simply like
yeah,
the stat lines are just simply better.
yeah, I'd put it above Flesh Golem. I don't know if it goes above
Oh,
Amalgamate though. At least
I'd
Amalgamate has
put
a deck for it.
I'd put it above Flesh Thrower.
Oh, Flesh Sower. I think it's
Yeah,
Flesh Golem.
no.
All right. I don't know if it's worse than Lich.
Well, I
That's
wouldn't
a
say
bit.
it's better than Dreadful Drain.
Yeah, I would switch. I would make Lich higher than Dreadful Drain, and then I would make. I think Rat. Drain has such a good use in that one deck, though.
Yeah, but Lich is a whole ass, Dungeon Master, and it can
Yeah,
be
no,
more
Lich I agree is
flexible.
higher, but I think with Drain has a better overall one deck it's in, but Rat can be used in other decks, just
Oh
as
yeah,
an okay.
I'd keep Dreadful Drain over Rat.
Yeah, just because of how good that one use is. Yeah,
Alright,
I agree.
alright.
Now,
So,
Arcane Eater's a fun one.
mhm.
It had its Plunder deck for a while. Heirloom Enchantment was really fun with it. It
Oh yeah,
combos
Earl
with all good
McCartman.
decks with spells. It
Yeah,
combos
yeah.
with a bunch of spells. It combos with
Honestly,
DM using a bunch of spells, especially with Field Bureaucrat. You
it's
know,
just a really solid card. Like, although like, it's a 2 mana,
yeah,
and people, and honestly, you can get good value out of it because it's a 2 mana. You use a couple spells and you usually get decent value out of those spells, and then you buff the creature, and then it takes people to use removal that's higher than 2 mana, so you're getting another mana advantage
yeah.
against
I
them.
think it's underused because people play it too early and it gets shit on. I
I
think if
agree.
you play it like turn 7 and combo it with an heirloom, a bullet, a fireball, whatever you want to use with it, I think it has so much more to be doing. Like I think especially with heirloom, the heirloom deck, especially with the field bureaucrats now. I mean, it takes 3 factions, so you can't really do that. But I think
Hmm.
like well, plunder with it. But I think it has enough combos that it has that deck. I just don't think anyone's really took the time to make a really good Arcane Eater deck in this meta and just put it to the test against everything.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
agree. Hopefully, we'll
I
see
think
something later
honestly,
on.
think about it now. I want to make some stuff, just test out with it. But I think it
Hmm
just does so well overall. It has to be played later in the game, but I think once it's in that little bit later, like 6, 7, it's really good. I would put it above Revital, but probably under Call.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
All right, because I think its deck could be, as of now, would probably be more meta than a Revital deck. But
Mm,
I don't know if it's better than just an overall good card like Call, just because
yeah,
you don't
I mean,
do a lot of work for it.
probably all good. Yeah, you usually get pretty decent value out of that, and
Yeah.
then I'd say it's better than Arcane. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Oh wait,
All right. All right.
thing is, Springtrap is the same mana value, and it completely diminishes its ability. That's my thing.
And now here's one of my favorite cards. All right, Bonesmith. More of a hidden. I don't really talk about it much, but I think there's there's a group of cards that are all on the same page of the book. Those cards are Necromancer, Bone Brute, Arcane Experiment, and Bonesmith. And these four cards work so well with each other. Necromancer provides the defense, Arcane Experiment provides the card draw, provides the aggression, and Bonesmith provides something that's gradually getting better as those things are dying off. Like you play it turn 1 and you play these other 2 manas, and it's just gaining value over time. I'm very passionate about that value. I think it's a really solid 1 mana, enough that I would put it, just because of that combo with those 4 cards, I would put it above Tombstone. I think it's a really undervalued card because those cards together make a really good spot in a lot of decks. It works well in Mastery, works well in Bone, works well in Lich, and I think that's enough to put it in the A tier.
Okay, and although it works well, I do not think it belongs in the A tier, purely because it can just get like you let's say your opponent was first and you place it down and it just gets blipped away by a Call of the Old God on your
Yeah,
opponent's second turn.
that
And
can happen.
Arcane Eater does progress faster, and the Vile Bonesmith doesn't work amazingly without Gunhaunt,
But to be
and
fair,
it
it
doesn't
is
work.
the best 1 mana in the faction. So if you're playing Augur, it's the only 1 mana option other than Medic, which you can't really use turn 1, right?
Honestly, I would put it just under Arcane Experiment. I feel like it works side by side with those cards, and it gives
Uh,
like around the same value ring as them. Like I wouldn't go as far as an A, but maybe like a mid mid B.
Yeah, actually, I think it would fit nice because I was just talking about how it works so well with Necromancer, Arcane Experiment, and Bone Brute. So
Yeah,
I would agree it's like of the four, it's probably the worst because it's just a 1 drop and it doesn't have the death card draw and the 2 bodies. But I think
yeah,
because of how well those 4 cards work together in a lot of DM decks, I like it being higher up. I think
yeah,
it's really good. The best 1 mana in DM because doesn't have a lot of competition. Better one
yeah,
mana than the neutrals and the augur. But when it comes to MRA and plunder, it falls as one of a good 1 manas because those all the MRA 1 manas outclass and all the plunder 1 manas outclass. So
yeah. Now, Zarathrix. This is a really interesting card because it can just it's just continuous mastery. So you all like if you have
you
a
don't
mastery
have to
spell.
use dutifuls to get that extra damage early game from
Exactly.
removal.
Exactly.
I think it only
Honestly,
really
I put
works.
it
Uh,
lower S tier to high A tier because it's just such a good dungeon
because
master. I'd say it's one of the best.
I see a lot of people say it's replaceable in a mastery because just use Gunhaunt for the field, they'll do just as much damage. But I think the
No.
thing with Zerathris is that it's instant mastery. Later game it gains a lot of mastery, and early game it helps you remove every target. Like with Call of the Old God Dark Matter, you can remove any early game target you're really worried about for the most
Yeah,
part.
and
And I think
it's being comboed with Royal Crypt also
yeah,
is really good.
and at the same time, it also provides you enough damage so you could be using spells early without having to worry about you not doing enough damage in the end. Like I like
Yeah,
using Dark Matters turn 1 and 2 and 3 before Spellshapers because I don't want to take the death dam. I don't want to take that backwards damage. I'll save it if it's my only damaging spell, but other than that, I want to use it early. So like with Aerothrix, of course. So I just thing with S tier is that we put it as like S tier is really reigning. And I will admit it isn't like the best deck in the game in my opinion right now, and I think your opinion too.
Yeah, Mastery is one of the best right now, just because of how quick it is, how it's just unavoidable damage, on the
Right.
most part, apart from breach of terms. Mastery is probably the top dog right now in this meta.
And so just like Spellshaper, it's kind of getting overrated because of how good that deck is, while overall it still is more niche than some of the other great cards we put up here.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're gonna put it in needs a nerf, could you propose a small nerf? I think if I could hear a nerf that would work really well for it, I could put it in needs a nerf.
So I feel like if we were calling this a nerf category, it would have to be more of a mid. It would have to be mid S for us to really call for a nerf. But like I feel like it's creeping up to it. Like the fact that it's been the top dog for such a long time, and there's not been much else in competition with it. I wouldn't say it needs a nerf. It just needs other decks to catch up with it. So I would put it at low S until other decks start catching up with it.
Yeah. I think the thing is we're putting it low S, but since it's the only S, it kind of gives the opinion that it's just the best card in the faction or in the faction, which it's definitely not the best card in the faction. But because of how potent that deck is, I could see it like maybe you only gain one mastery after 6 cards in the grave, or like maybe I could have a slight rework of any
Yeah.
nerfs for it on the spot. But
Yeah.
it definitely is the catalyst of the best deck in the game, one of the best decks in the game, and it always has been kind of an iffy topic. It's gone through a few reworks, so I think we could put it in S. But I want to make it clear, it's not the best card in the faction, and it's not like Stone needs a nerf; they need to destroy this. But I think
Yeah,
a
I agree.
slight nerf or other cards that can counter it, other than like Breach of Terms, there's not really any counters to
Yeah.
Mastery. Right? So I don't think it needs a nerf directly. I think there needs to be other cards in the game that work well against it.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Now,
don't get the wrong idea. But yeah, on to
Pe- Pe-
Archivist.
Penguin wants his baby to left untouched. It's I'd say a C or D purely because it's meant to. In my opinion, it looks like it's meant to be used in Mastery, but if you have
It does not.
Zarathric, it banishes the spell, and it's too slow. Yes, it gives you one Mastery, but it's just slow and banishes the spell, so it's counterproductive. So I'd
At
put that
most,
at
you
a
get the
C or
one
D.
spell back, but at the same time, it gets removed by Enhanced Bullet, by
Yep.
non-enhanced Fireball. It gets stolen. It gets banished, and all of these are positive mana trades. Even
Yeah.
like it gets reparation. It just, phew.
Honestly, and
It,
I think a D. It's just not
yeah.
good.
I know Mayo's cringing in his seat right now. But
Yeah.
I really always had a dislike for this card compared to the other high manas that we put a little higher just because of their niche decks and the fact that they could do stuff on entrance. Like
Yeah.
Mastercraft Flesh Golem is getting a bone. Royal Crypt Guardian is getting you card draw and duplication. This
Yeah.
guy, he gets you one spell, which if you're in a mastery, it's good, but at the same time you lose card from graveyard, which isn't that bad. It's not that bad. But at the same time, it gets removed so quick, it's never gonna do what it looks like it's doing. So I think it
Yeah.
should be I think it's better than Poison Gift. Maybe. Better than
It's better
Dutiful.
than Poison Gift. Honestly, yeah, it's better than Poison Gift. Honestly, I'd put
Yeah.
Dutiful over Poison Gift, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. 'Cause at least it's the only one mana used in Mastery.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
used.
So,
At least it's used.
would you change anything in this list? I'm a bit iffy on that Soul Essence. I feel like that needs to be a little bit lower. But I don't know.
Where do you think it should go? Like under call? Overcall? Like
Under Arcane Eater, honestly, because it doesn't really like the best way, in my opinion, the best way to use Soul Essence would probably be with an Arcane Eater on the field.
of course, yeah. It does great with Arcane Eater.
Yeah. So I'd put that
Yeah,
just under Arcane Eater.
I'll agree.
And Cosmic
I think
Reanimation. Hmm.
I would put Revital under the likes of Necromancer and Arcane Experiment because those two just give you nice value while
Yeah.
Revital needs a deck around it. So I think we should lower that a bit. I think we're a little
Yeah,
overzealous placement,
yeah.
just because of how strong the ability is itself.
Yeah,
You know?
and with the
Maybe even
current
Dread.
method being aggro.
Maybe even Dread above it. Yeah, I'll move Dread up above Bonesmith and above Revital.
Now, Cosmic Reanimation. Now, I feel like having that over a Bone Amalgamate is reaching a bit, because it just does not. That doesn't seem right, because a Bone deck would usually beat a Cosmic Reanimation, you know.
Yeah.
So
move Reanimation.
honestly, I think we might have overshot that one.
Yeah. I think the only ones that, to be honest, that Revital should probably be moved under by 2. Reanimation can be moved down by 1. And then we really have to think to ourselves, is Flesh Golem better than Lich?
Okay, so I'd say yes, in my opinion. Just Lich takes away field. Mastercraft adds field, and it can be pretty big field too.
I think it's just the fact that there's no reason for you to use him over Gunhaunt. You know? And especially when you can only have one Dungeon Master.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah, Dread Experiment raised over Revitalization is the only one I can think of. Anything for you?
I'd say Cosmic Reanimation. I'm still a bit. I feel like that should be next to Ritual of Annihilation, because they're usually used around the same time of the game, and they're usually they both take an equal amount of setup, and they're both niche. So I'd say put the Cosmic Reanimation next to the Ritual.
I think you also rated it kind of high just because of how well it worked in your spellbook deck, which I do see it does work pretty well, and in like other combo OTK decks. But yeah, I think I agree. I can put it next to it. I think it'd be above Roa.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I feel like. Well, actually, I'd say actually no. I think it's under Ritual.
Yeah, I could probably get with that because sacrificing is so easy.
Yeah, and apart from that, honestly, I think obviously not everyone's going to agree with everything, but I feel like this list, on the most part, is pretty fair.
Yeah, I think I like it. I think I was surprised that like when I'm looking at Necromancer and Arcane Experiment and like Bonesmith, they're like lower than I thought they'd be. But now that I'm looking at it out on a tier list, I like it. I think the placements are good.
Yeah, well, I've enjoyed doing this. Don't know about you, but this has been quite well. I feel like it's went well.
Yeah, been a blast.
Yeah. Awesome, great.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Tony. It's been a nice experience.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. You've been great.
All right, thank you to Tucky and SirPenguinn for joining us here today in order to rank all of these Dungeon Master cards. We appreciate you dearly. Now, don't give them too much hate for all of these hot takes. They are merely humans, but if you want to make your own tier list and share it down in the Discord, then I will leave the link to the tier list we used down in the description below, so you can make your own, as well as the link to the description where you then be able to share your tier list. But other than that, make sure to subscribe and like so you can help spread my content around, as well as keep up with my content when new videos release. And thanks for watching the video. Have a good one, guys.